Every rising star in business should invest the time, the talent, and the resources to understand the ideal client. It is your understanding of your ideal client that is going to set you up for success.
Pitch Deck 101 LLC out of New York. Do more than just support our clients to pitch their businesses to investors access working capital at 0% APR. We also support our clients to grow and scale their businesses faster and cash flow optimize. Pitch Deck 101 LLC recent partnership with 10X Branding Marketing LLC and Global Capital Inc. out of the USA has enabled us to form unique partnership with multiple financial institutions, which means we can do even more to accelerate the success of our clients. Let Pitch Deck 101 LLC give you the support you need to pitch to investors, access capital, access new markets, and grow and scale your business. Contact us now on 332-235-1099 for a free consultation.
To understand the ideal client, it means that you're investing time and talent and resources to truly understand what we call the ideal client stress test ladder. Have you ever heard of this ladder? To understand the ideal client, it begins by you, first of all, understanding the first strata in the ecosystem of identifying the ideal client. And the first strata is what we call establishing brand relevance. Now, to establish brand relevance, it means that the product or services that you're offering, your MVO, your minimum and most viable offer, is relevant to the ideal client. But how do you know this? If you're not stress testing your value offer against the interests, the needs, wants, and expectations of the ideal client. Now, let's go a little deeper into this today. To establish brand relevance, there are three important concepts that you need to hold very close to your mind. The very first concept is to identify the ideal client. What does it take to identify the ideal client? We will talk a whole lot about that shortly. But that's step one in the equation of establishing brand relevance. The second important concept that you need to focus on is to identify the needs, wants, and expectations of the ideal client. You need to take the time to understand the specific needs of that ideal client. Now, how can you say you know the ideal client when, in fact, you don't really understand what are the biodata of the ideal client? And how can you say that you understand the needs of the ideal client if you don't understand these things? You cannot depend on speculation. I would often say that speculation is the godfather of debt. And you don't want to speculate all the way to undermining, sabotaging your business potential for success. So to establish brand relevance, you want to first of all identify who is the ideal client. Second, you want to identify the specific needs of that ideal client. And then you focus on innovating, relevant, and a strong MVO. Now, this is the mistake that we see many rising stars in business do. You get into business and you are anxious about providing a product or a service. You're investing in this process, not necessarily knowing who is the ideal client and not necessarily knowing what are their specific needs. And we're going to go deep into this today so you have a much clearer interpretation of what I'm saying. The last thing that you want to do is to innovate before the information. So the first aspect that I talk about, identify the ideal client, it means that you are now preparing to become market oriented. Identifying the specific needs of the target market now means that you are now preparing to become market sensitive. And that's what's going to lead to market responsiveness. And it's in responsiveness is where the innovation takes place. But let's try to unlock and unpack some of what I said earlier. What does it really take for you to say that I truly understand the ideal client? So your first task is to identify the ideal client. But what does that entails? Let us try to break this down. One of the first things that you want to focus on when you're attempting to identify the ideal client, there's the concept that we talk about, the reverse pyramid. And when you get into the reverse pyramid, one of the first things that you're exposed to and helping you to identify the ideal client is the concept that we call demographic classification. So you want to identify who is your ideal client. What demographic classification allows you to do is to identify whether you're targeting the middle class, the upper class, or the average class of people. Why is this so important? Because each category of consumers, they have different buyer data markers that you need to understand. And it is only by understanding these buyer data markers you can then say, I truly understand the ideal client. If you don't understand the buyer data marker, you're speculating. And when you speculate, remember, speculation is the godfather of debt, the debt of your business. And that's not what you want. Again, what we have seen is that so many persons starts a business and you assume that the business is going to be successful simply because you start the business. But because you don't have the data, you don't have a clear idea as to your demographic classification, you're in business, but you're not able to make highly informed and educated business decisions as to how you're going to innovate and position products and services to reach the interests of the ideal client. And that sets the stage for self-sabotage. That sets the stage to undermine and compromise your potential to achieve greatness. So your ability to identify the ideal client is important. Demographic classification is one of the first things that you want to do. Who are you targeting? Premium brand, complementary brand, supplementary brand, upper class, middle class, the average citizen. You need to know this, and you need to be absolutely clear about it. So now that you've gone past step one, let's look at another concept. Are you able to establish urgency and immediacy within the demographic classification? Yes, urgency and immediacy is important. Why? Because once you're able to establish urgency and immediacy of the ideal client, it tells you that they have a willingness to buy now. It tells you that they have immediate needs. And your ability to reach and satisfy those immediate needs and to supersede the expectations of those immediate needs is what's going to set you up for success. In my classroom, very often, question is asked, is all business established to serve immediate needs? And I think it's a fair question and an absurd question at the same time. And I want you to think about it. Can you imagine that you want to sell baby clothing or clothing and, products for expectant mothers? Let us just say that this is your business model. But then you're in a community where they are early teenagers. They have very strict parents. So there's nowhere on the radar. They are nowhere close on that radar to start thinking about becoming mom and the boys' dads. So what's going to happen here? It clearly established that there's no urgency and there's no immediacy. So you can predict with 101 degree of accuracy what's going to happen with your business model, unless you come up with some crazy idea to, inspire, parents and kids to go and do crazy things so your products can sell. You can literally predict these things. So urgency and immediacy will ultimately be the influencing factor as to how early your business and your brand is going to cash flow. As you do that ideal client stress test, these on the first ladder, these are some of the things that you would need to go into. So now that you have done the first two tests here, demographic classification, urgency, and immediacy, what comes next? You want to establish that the market is viable, and you're able to establish the market viability based on data. Again, the mistake that we see many rising stars in business do is that you start a business without truly assessing how viable the market is. And there are data that you can collect. There are data that you can analyze. There are data that you can up-level and mitigate to help you to be in that position of strength to predetermine the viability of the market, because it doesn't make sense to get into a market not knowing its viability. The more you know about the market is what's going to set you up for success. The reality is you may be able to identify demographic classification. You may be able to identify urgency and immediacy. But the people that you're catering to, they are so small, the market is now viable. So there's so much more to this, but I'm doing a high-level overview. As you come into our program, we will do a deeper analysis on these concepts so as to ensure that you have the winning formula for client conversion optimization. The next concept that you want to look at is market accessibility. And this is a real challenge. mentioned, I have been working with businesses, small businesses, over the last 20 plus years. What I see happens very often, they have excellent innovation and creativity, but where the problem lies is in accessibility. They are not able to access the market. They are not able to access the ideal client simply based on the fact that they haven't done demographic classification. They have not identified urgency and immediacy, and they have not even identified market viability. But here is where you innovate and you want to access a market. You want to access a market, and enough time was not spent to really understand the ideal client based on geography. We're going to go deeper into these concepts as we go deeper into these programs. The objective here is to do a high level overview.
Essential Care Pharmacy, providing more than your healthcare needs. Get the best in muscle building products, health supplement products, beauty care products, medical supplies, colognes and cosmetics, blood pressure testing kits. Access our medical doctors, and so much more. Essential Care Pharmacy, your leading healthcare provider.
This indeed is a real challenge. Many rising stars get into business without taking the time to understand market access. If you are not studying your market accessibility, if you don't have the data that is influencing the decision-making process, again, you're speculating, and you know what speculation is. It is the godfather of that. So as we talk about the ideal client stress test ladder, these are important concepts that you need to hold very close to your heart, and to ensure that you have the expertise, or at least you're working with subject matter expert that can really help you to navigate these terrains of doing business, these terrains of identifying the ideal client, these terrains of being able to build healthy, productive relationship with the ideal client that's going to lead to the cash flow optimization. Because if you don't understand these terrains, accessibility, market accessibility, you're going to undermine the success of your business. We go deep into this to really ensure you understand how to access the market. And these are all things that you would need to do to stress test the ideal client. When you look at our ideal client stress test ladder, it gives you a step-by-step approach to achieve all of this. You may be able to do all of this. You do the demographic classification, you look at urgency and immediacy, you look at viability, you look at accessibility. But guess what you didn't look at? The client's ability to pay. And some people might say, okay, I'm targeting the middle class, I'm targeting the upper class. In the middle and upper class, they have the ability to pay. You may be right, but yet you may be absolutely wrong, because the willingness to pay is demographic biodata that you need to understand. But then the ability to pay does not translate into the willingness to pay. These are two different things. And if you don't understand the factors at work that are influencing the decision-making process, you don't really understand the ideal client. You're speculating. So you want to know that the ideal client has the ability to pay, and that's based on demographic data. But along with this, you want to ensure that the ideal client has the willingness to pay, and that's psychographic data. And there's two different things. And if you don't understand, again, the factors that are influencing the decision-making process here, you don't understand the ideal client. You're speculating. And again, you want to connect with a subject matter expert that can help you navigate these terrains, because your inability to understand the ideal client is your inability to innovate products and services that are designed to appeal to their interests with clinical precision so as to help you to achieve your sales objectives. So you need to connect with a subject matter expert that can really help you navigate these realities. And this is the foundation of every successful business. You need to invest time truly understanding the ideal client long before you start to innovate products and services for the ideal client. It is by going through these systems that I have just spoken about. You want to do the demographic classification. You want to establish urgency and immediacy. You want to establish market viability. You want to establish market accessibility. You want to establish the client's ability to pay. You want to establish the client's willingness to pay. It's only by understanding all of these things, you are now in that strategic position to say, my brand is relevant. Ask yourself the question, do you want to innovate products and services to a client that don't have the willingness to pay? Is that brand relevant? Do you want to innovate products and services for a client that don't have the ability to pay. They may have urgency and immediacy, but then they don't have the ability to pay. Is that establishing brand relevance? You may be innovating products and services, but then you don't have access to the ideal client based on geographic realities. Is that establishing brand relevance? So there's a number of moving parts that you really need to pause a bit and focus on to ensure that you understand the ideal client. So what we have developed is known as the ideal client stress test ladder that takes you through a step-by-step approach to really understand the ideal client. So what we have looked at today is elements of treader 1 of the ladder. The next treader on the ladder is where we begin to look at brand viability, market viability. And this is a deep subject matter for us to go into. If you're going to be going into business, you want to establish from the get-go that it makes financial sense to actually get into that area of business. You don't want to speculate about these things because you can spend months and years and decades attempting to build wealth on a pathway that is destined to keep you poor, but you don't know because you don't understand how to stress test it. So this is a foundational program that every single rising star in business need to understand. And you need to understand this before you come across to what we call the client conversion ladder. That's another story by itself, but you need to understand. Today, we talk about practical steps that you can take to really learn and identify with your ideal client. And if you're not doing this, the possibility exists that you're speculating your way in business. That historically, the facts are out there showing that these are some of the reasons why so many businesses start and fail. Many businesses never live to reach the 5-year life cycle, much less that 10-year life cycle. And you fail because do you understand your ideal client? Do you know how to innovate and products and services in alignment with their specific needs? So I trust that today's program really whets your appetite and really emphasize the importance of you getting to understand, knowing your ideal client. So let me quickly recap some of what we looked at today. I begin today's program by saying it is absolutely necessary for you to invest the time, talent, and resources to understand the ideal client, to know your ideal client. Well, what does it take to know the ideal client? One of the first things that you want to establish is brand relevance. That means that the product and services that you're offering to the ideal client must be relevant to them. But how do you know that the product and services that you're offering to the ideal client is relevant to them in the first place if there's no stress test? We went on to look at one, when you want to establish brand relevance in the eyes of the ideal client and in the interest of the business, you first of all want to invest time to identify who is the ideal client. Second, you want to identify the specific needs of the ideal client, after which you use that information to innovate with relevance, a strong MVO. So that is the summary of what we would have looked at today. My name is Gary Thompson. I'm the author of several books. My last book is Master the Sales Communication Process. And I do encourage you to like, subscribe, and share so you will be the first to get these content that we are bringing to you on a regular basis. And in the event that you need further support with your business to really connect and identify with your ideal client, I encourage you to do not hesitate to reach out. It will be my pleasure to talk with you. Be blessed and see you in the next broadcast.
Elevate your business with 10X Branding and Marketing LLC. Our expert team specializes in enhancing your brand's visibility and connecting you with your ideal clients. We employ strategies that increase reach, leaving a lasting impact and driving client conversion. Trust and credibility are vital in businesses and excel in building them even with a limited budget. Our cost-effective approaches ensure you get the best results without overspending. Ready to boost your business cash flow? Contact us at 332-235-T99 and let 10X Branding and Marketing LLC guide you to success. Our focus is on elevating your visibility, which directly translates to growth. Experience the power of effective branding and marketing with us and witness your business thrive.